say okay, and then as soon as you hit okay, you're on. You're live.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. It's Ezra Levant. I am in Halifax. I am not in the Conservative Party convention because, of course, we rebels have been banned. It's really bizarre. Andrew Scheer, the leader of most of the Conservative Party, has rolled out the red carpet to the CBC, to the CTV, to the Toronto Star, to every left-wing opinion website from Huffington Post to Vice. But bizarrely, they've banned us rebels from attending, even though our friends and enemies alike both say we're like the house organ for Canada's Conservatives. I mean, we're not partisan. We don't have, at least I don't have a party membership, and I don't take my orders from anyone but our viewers. But it's really bizarre that the only Conservative media company in Canada is banned from the Conservative Party convention. It would be like if Fox News were banned from the Republican convention. It would just be weird. I don't want to linger on that, but it is worth saying because it goes to some of the quirks and weaknesses of Andrew Scheer, the largest of which was on display yesterday when Maxime Bernier, his leadership rival, who he dispatched 51 to 49 15 months ago, it's basically a tie vote, and Andrew Scheer edged him out. Maxime Bernier quit the party in a huff yesterday, claiming he's going to start a new Conservative Party. I'm skeptical about that, and I don't think it was a wise decision either pragmatically or in terms of moving the ideology forward. I haven't talked to Maxime Bernier since his announcement. I'll see if I can. But the fact that 15 months after Andrew Scheer won the Conservative leadership, he still did not make peace and find a modus vivendi with his chief rival speaks to his leadership. Listen, it's tough. I remember when I worked for Stockwell Day very briefly when he was the leader of the Canadian Alliance Party. And I think it's obvious that his greatest failure was failing to pacify his leadership rival's camp. He defeated the founder of the party, Preston Manning, and Preston's inner circle, his palace guard, Deborah Gray, Chuck Strahl, Monty Solberg, they all quit. And the fact that Stockwell Day couldn't unify the party did so many things. Obviously, weakened the party both internally and in the public eye. Andrew Scheer's inability to harness Maxime Bernier and have him pointing in the same direction is his largest failure so far. And it's not something that only Conservatives have to deal with. Every party in the world has to deal with that. The obvious example, and I've been using it recently, is Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, leadership rivals. Paul Martin, powerful at the time, lots of connections. Some would say sophisticated on Bay Street. I don't know if I'd go that far. But Jean Chrétien found a way to harness Paul Martin's skills and ambitions and put him to work not only for Chrétien and the party, but for the country. And that détente lasted a decade until Paul Martin just ran out of patience. A better leader would have been able to harness Maxime Bernier to the good of the party, including, deploying him in Quebec. That's where Maxime Bernier is so strong. And wouldn't it have been interesting if Andrew Scheer could have said to Maxime Bernier, okay, you're upset about this dairy cartel issue. You're the point man in Quebec that has to sell it, and good luck. If Andrew Scheer thought it was a poison pill, then he would be giving a poison chalice to his rival. But if Maxime Bernier would have succeeded, what a wonderful success for the whole party in the country. It's just a failure. I was shocked yesterday to hear that Maxime Bernier had not even received a phone call from Andrew Scheer in 9 days, despite how things were clearly falling apart. Anyways, I don't want to talk too much more about that because it's of interest to Conservative partisans, and I'd say the Canadian Conservatives who are counting on the party to depose Justin Trudeau in next year's election. I think the likelihood of that just fell. I don't think Maxime Bernier did himself any favors by taking himself out of the party. I think he should be here in Halifax pressing the flesh, working through the party's channels, working the floor of the policy debates, slowly putting his imprint on the party, championing different local and regional party executives. He didn't. He sort of took his marbles and left. I don't think that's a winning strategy. And I don't think Andrew Scheer is any stronger today. He may feel that he's relieved to have an internal rival gone, but again, I think unlike when Belinda Stronach left the party in a pout, Maxime Bernier has a lot more genuine support in the Conservatives than Belinda Stronach ever did. So I think it's bad news, and I think the likelihood of a Conservative win next year just fell. The likelihood of a Trudeau re-election went up, and Andrew Scheer may be the leader of the party with one fewer rival, but it's certainly a smaller party. Anyways, those are my thoughts on that, and the reason I started off by mentioning the fact that we're banned from entering the convention itself goes to a weird strategic lack of focus by Andrew Scheer. I mean, the amount of time he and his inner team have spent wrestling with what do we do with the rebel, which is a weird question to ask at all. If they would have put that energy into real things, like solidifying the unity of their own party, I think they probably could have found some sort of compromise with Maxime Bernier. I mean, let me put it to you this way. The damage this has done to the party is so large in my view. What compromise with Bernier would have been worse? Compromising on the dairy cartel, how's that worse? Giving him some symbolic regional leadership role in Quebec, how is that worse than the PR damage and the morale damage and the momentum damage and the polling damage that this has done? I think it goes to Andrew Scheer's passivity. And the fact that we're not allowed in the convention is weird. I mean, to be honest, most of what goes on inside the actual meeting rooms of the convention is pretty boring. I really can't imagine that our rebel viewers would be that interested in, for example, a seminar on how to deal with the media. I just don't think that's interesting to normal people. And there's a lot of irony there. But we've been around the precincts of the convention. We went to a restaurant last night outside the convention, and we could barely get a bite of our food in. Every couple of minutes, someone came over, members of parliament, party staff, Andrew Scheer's own staff. Even Hamish Marshall, Andrew Scheer's campaign manager. I wasn't there at the time, but he kibitzed a little bit with, every single person at this party convention knows that keeping the rebel out is a weird thing. And it was funny, there was one candidate from the Lower Mainland in BC who showed me his phone. He was getting so much flack from grassroots supporters saying, why did you keep out the rebel? Why did you keep out the rebel? He asked me if he could pose for a selfie with me to send these angry critics back home to prove that he was a rebel supporter. You got to admit that's funny. You got to admit that's funny that he was asking me for a favor to take a selfie so he could prove to his supporters that he wasn't a left-wing weirdo. Which is, I got to say, I'm sorry. I know that Andrew Scheer is not left-wing. Well, maybe I don't know that quite firmly. I mean, he's left-wing on the dairy cartel and he's left-wing on global warming. And obviously he's left-wing in his free speech ban. So maybe he is a little bit left-wing. But it's a bit weird. I mean, seriously, if you're the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and you think public enemy number one is the rebel, or maybe you think public enemy number one was Maxime Bernier, you're not thinking big enough. Your enemy is Justin Trudeau, and if you want to expand from that, you can add Trudeau's state broadcaster, the CBC. Anyways, what do we do every week here? And I know we were talking a lot about the Halifax Conservative Convention. I'm just at the... for reasons of good internet, I'm at our Airbnb. We flew out here and we're staying economically in the Airbnb, so we have great internet here, so I'm doing this little chat from here, but I'll be leaving to go to the convention again a little bit later. So what we do every Friday, and I'm glad to do it here from a place with good internet, is we do the Super Chat. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there are little comments, and many people are making them. Thank you for that. And you can do what is called a Super Chat, which is you chip in a few bucks few pounds, few of any currency, and your comment is put in a bright highlighted color, and so I'll see it and I make sure to read those. And the fun thing about that, as I always mention, is that we actually get a share of that dough. YouTube shares it with us. I think we get 70% of it. So it's actually a way to help us pay the bills. When I did these super chats every single day, we called Fridays Free for All Fridays. That's the only day we do it now. So without further ado, let me read a few comments. Because I'm on the road, I can't call for video clips like I do when I'm in the Toronto studio. So let me read some comments. Jennifer Maga says, I have no idea what Super Chat is. Super Chat is when you spend a few dollars and you make your comment highlighted, and it can be appended to the top of that screen for a bit. Amazon says, exactly, only scared leftists ban the media. Scheer is a wuss no one wants. It's really weird. I mean, what does he think we're going to do from in there? Why? What is the harm that he thinks we'll do being inside the building instead of out? Does he think that we'll like pee on the carpet or something, like an untrained pet? I just don't even understand what the ban is, other than its most obvious purpose, which is virtue signaling to the mainstream media, to the media party, that, oh, we're not that kind of conservative. We're not the kind of conservatives that you guys hate. We're conservatives in name only. So if we hate the rebel, can you let us in your cool kids club? That's the only conceivable reason. It doesn't even make sense. Stephanie M says, you have been bashing him for months. We've been critical of him on supply management, the dairy cartel thing that I mentioned. We've been critical of him on his support for the Paris Global Warming Treaty. And obviously, we've been quite critical of him for keeping us out the last few days. But other than that, I don't think we've been particularly critical or supportive of him. We just sort of call it like we see it. As you may know, his campaign manager, Hamish Marshall, was my co-founder of the Rebel. And we let Hamish sort of use our office every day to run the campaign. I mean, we had sort of a Chinese wall, as they call it, where he didn't have anything to do with our editorial policy. But Hamish was a buddy of mine, and he, I said, sure, go ahead, use the office, I don't care. In fact, there was one time when Andrew Scheer came by and filmed a video in our studio. Now, we charged him because we didn't want to give it to him as a gift, but there you go. I'll read some super chats because I see them coming in now, and you can see what a super chat looks like, Jessica. It's those brightly colored comments. Ezra's First Irregulars chips in £2 and says, what are your thoughts on the South African situation? Well, I just tweeted a terrifying video, and I can't show you right now because I don't have the same real-time access to my control room in Toronto as I do when I'm there. But there's this terrifying video. If you go to my Twitter feed, which is twitter.com/Ezra Levant, it's a video of a politician of the EFF party, and I want to make sure I get his first name right. I think it's Julian or Julius Malema, and he's leading a huge rally, thousands and thousands of people. He's leading them in a song or a chant: "Shoot the Boer, shoot the Boer, pow pow, shoot the Boer." And that Boer is there's two, I guess, main tribes of white South Africans. There's the Dutch, who were there centuries ago, and then there were the Brits, who were there more recently. And the Dutch South Africans are Boers, B-O-E-R. That's just what they're called. And so shoot the Boer, pow pow, is their plan. They plan to expropriate, without compensation, Dutch white farms. And they don't just do it through legal or illegal methods. They do it through violence, through terrorist-style, military-style attacks on these farms. And so I find it terrifying. It's obviously racial and ethnic in its motivations. It's obviously going to destroy the breadbasket of South Africa the same way that Mugabe and Zimbabwe destroyed Rhodesia. So, yeah, it's terrible, and I really don't know if there's a future for South Africa. I just don't know enough about the country, but it's certainly not encouraging. And Donald Trump tweeted about it, which is very interesting. Mike Corbin chips in $10 and says, does Scheer have a Gerald Butts type of senior advisor who has significant influence over him? If so, who is it? Well, funny enough, I think it's actually my old buddy Hamish Marshall. Hamish was the strategist who gamed the contest and got Andrew Scheer into first place. Andrew Scheer was in second place all along, but every time, I mean, remember there were 13 different ballots, 13 rounds of voting in the Conservative Convention, and Scheer didn't win until the last one. Obviously, he wasn't even in first place to the last one. He was sort of everybody's second or third choice. And that's fine if you're building some sort of a coalition of the least objectionable person, but it's not. No one says, I love Andrew Scheer. I love him. Some people say that about Maxime Bernier. Now, you don't need to be charismatic to win. I mean, Stephen Harper has his fans, but I don't think it was an emotional, passionate fan base, at least not till later on when people realized how important what he was doing is. I think people supported Stephen Harper because he was solid and reliable and substantive, and he had a great plan and a strategy, and he carried it out. Andrew Scheer has Stephen Harper's lack of charisma, but I don't think he has his ideological clarity or his strategy. So my answer to you is, Mike, I think it's actually my old buddy Hamish who is that. And I think the fact that Hamish worked with us at the Rebel means he's a little bit skewed, strangely enough, because he overthinks about us. He blends his personal thoughts, his inside knowledge about us with his new role. And it's just really weird to me that he would think banning the Rebel is a good idea at all, let alone for a Conservative party, let alone for a party where his base is so overwhelmingly fans for us. Look, we've got more than 1 million YouTube subscribers, and a lot of them are Conservative supporters. It's just weird to me. Jennifer Maga chips in $1.99. Thank you for that, Jennifer. I just lost it here. Is banning reporters a new conservative value? No, it's not conservative, and that's the thing. It's sort of a good get-even move, although I don't even know how it gets even. I mean, would I like to physically attend inside the conference center? Sure, I'd go in there to schmooze, but I have to say last night I barely had a minute to myself when I was sitting outside having dinner, and I met plenty of MPs. It was universally friendly. I suppose haters wouldn't come up, but I talked to plenty of people who were party officials, fairly senior party staff even, leader's office style staff, party staff. It was friendly. How can you not like the Rebel if you're conservative? I mean, maybe your nose is bent out of joint over this story or that story, but we've published 9,700 stories. I mean, how are you going to agree with them all? I don't even agree with all 9,700 videos we've done. How can you? I mean, how can it? And if that's your test, well, then you're not going to have any media there. A super chat from Ben Tomlinson, who chips in $10. Thanks, Ben. Max's only path to win more than one seat is to unite Quebec separatists with nationalists. I'm very torn over this. I was with Max from day one, and I want Trudeau defeated. Well, yeah, I mean, if Maxime Bernier had asked me for my advice, and he did not, my advice to him would have been, stay within the party. Be the ideological hero within the party, trying to pull it back away from this weird dairy thing and the global warming thing, and pull it towards a more realistic policy on immigration and multiculturalism. So my advice to him would have been try to move the party from within, use your significant support within the party, which I think he vaporized a lot of, use the party structures, use his ability to get media at the drop of a hat, use all those things to benefit the cause, to put Trudeau on the back foot. And if, as is quite possible and maybe even probable, if Andrew Scheer loses the election next year, well, if Maxime Bernier had been a good second in command all this past time, he would be the obvious heir apparent. I mean, he obviously is the next guy, the leader in waiting. Now he's not. If he could just keep his powder dry for 1 year, if he really thinks Andrew Scheer is doing a poor job, and I think Andrew Scheer is doing a poor job, sorry to be mean about it. I mean, when Doug Ford wins a majority in Ontario, when conservative views or conservative parties are on the rise in other parts of the country, when Justin Trudeau's had a disastrous 2018 and Andrew Scheer is back in the polls. What's the explanation for that? Justin Trudeau has had an awful spring and summer. Would you agree with me? Fiascos ranging from the India goofiness to the groping scandal to his NAFTA disaster to the open borders. And Scheer has not been taking advantage of it. Justin Trudeau has taken weeks of holidays. Andrew Scheer could have filled that gap with his own issues. I don't know where Andrew Scheer was. We got a new video. I think it just went up. You got to see it. Can you do this? Can you go to the rebel.media? And let me see if it's up right now. I'm actually typing that right now to see if it's up there, the rebel.media. David Menzies went on the streets of Toronto with a picture of Andrew Scheer. And I'm not sure if I can see it on our main website right now, but it hopefully will be up there soon. You got to see it. I think it's on our YouTube page. He just asked people on the street, "Who's this?" with a full-colored picture of Andrew Scheer, and no one knew who it was. It was actually really funny because a lot of people said, I don't know. And there's this one moment where Menzies says, "It's Andrew Scheer, ma'am." But she hears Andrew Scheerman. You got to watch it. It's a lot funnier than I just made it sound. Okay, let's get back. I see some super chats there. David Lincoln, banning the Rebel is akin to the Kremlin banning Malcolm Muggeridge from reporting. You know, I think the analogy of Fox News being banned by the Republicans is a good one. But why would you ban anyone? I just don't get it. Ben Tomlinson, Max's only path to win more than one seat. Oh, I already read that one. To unite Quebec separatists with nationalists. The thing is, and my point is another point, is if Maxime Bernier had kept his powder dry, if he would have inherited or fought and won the party leadership, let's say a year from now, or 2 years from now, he would have all the party's infrastructure and assets at his disposal. He would have a ready-made caucus of 100 MPs. He would have all the fundraising and the brand value and the party infrastructure and the local routing associations and all of that. Now he's starting from scratch. And from what I've seen, there's not yet another MP with him. I don't think he has a party name. You have to register. You have to build from the ground up. Why would you do that? I mean, that's 10 years of hard work. Ask Preston Manning. Ask Stephen Harper. Why would you choose 10 years of hard work from scratch when if you just stayed cool for a year or two, you would inherit the party if Andrew Scheer fails? And if Andrew Scheer wins, well, that's great. Hopefully you have a senior role in the cabinet. And I actually don't know the likelihood of Andrew Scheer winning. I just think it was a really strange decision. I see a few more super chats. Let me just make sure I acknowledge them. MD Proul chipped in $2. Thanks very much. If you want to have a comment or a question, please put it in, MD, and I'll look to see it. I'm just scrolling through. I think I've got all of them. All right. Now, by the way, it's 1:23, and in the headline for this super chat, you can see it says Tommy Robertson update. So for my British friends and those around the world who care about Tommy, let me give you just a very brief update. It's not a big update, but it is an update. As you may know, Tommy Robertson was supposed to have his rehearing on the matter of his contempt of court case. It was supposed to be heard on September 4th. You will recall that the Court of Appeal released Tommy from prison and quashed his conviction for contempt of court. But, unfortunately, they sent him back for another hearing. That was scheduled for September 4th, more than a month after Tommy was released. And by the way, Tommy was in prison on May 25th. So, May 25th to June 25th, July 25th, August 25th, tomorrow's the 3-month anniversary, and then a week to September 4th. 3 months and a week. And they weren't ready. The government is still not ready. They were instructed by a judge to have their case, their particulars, the details of their case disclosed to Tommy last week, and they didn't do it. So the case is now delayed by nearly a month. I think September 27th is the new hearing date. They're just holding this over Tommy's head. And more bad behavior. What it was so ironic and frustrating to me is that Tommy Robinson himself was rushed from arrest to trial to sentencing to conviction to sentencing in 5 hours. And the government of the United Kingdom can't even put a one-page piece of paper to Tommy in 5 months, particularizing what he did wrong. That's strange. I see another super chat from Go Lady Go. I wish we had firm confirmation from Andrew Scheer that we are turning away from globalism, like Brexit, more Trump style. Make Canada great again. It's funny you say that because I saw on Twitter in the past couple of days someone who claims, now I have no photographic confirmation, it's just what some guy said on Twitter, is that he had a Make Canada Great Again hat on, and he asked for a picture with Andrew Scheer with his hat on, and Andrew Scheer made him take off the hat. Why? Make Canada great again. Why? Why is that racist? Are you just so terrified of the media? And the answer to that is yes. I don't think I mentioned it, but there's this weird story that just went up on the Globe and Mail's website in the last hour or two. About, I got in a little bit later to Halifax than my colleagues, and they saw Hamish and they chatted with him for a bit, and that gossip reached the Globe and Mail, and they did a whole news story about how Hamish said hi to our people. And they had a whole story about that, as if we're like in high school. And did you see who Debbie spoke to? Debbie spoke to Mike after Mike broke up with Shirley. And like, it's just, I thought I was reading some high school gossip, and it was so pitiful. But that's what Andrew Scheer is afraid of with the Rebel. I can't imagine there's any legitimate thing he's worried about other than he wants to make sure the Globe and Mail's kept happy and the CBC is kept happy so they don't write these bizarre high school gossip style stories about. And I saw Hamish say hi to Ezra, and I think Ezra winked, or maybe it was a smile, or maybe Ezra just had gas and he was going like that. I mean, it was so weird. And isn't the better answer just to do what Maxime Bernier himself did last week when Rosemary Barton treated him unfairly in a news story? Maxime Bernier called her despicable and fake news. Isn't that what you do with liars in the media? Why are you submitting to them? Here's another super chat. MD Prule, Trump was rejected by the majority of Republican candidates, yet he won the presidency. The Conservative Party in Canada has shifted left, in my opinion. Well, ideologically, the leader has on the issue of dairy cartels, global warming, and censorship. So on those three things, yes. I just can't even say with certainty where Andrew Scheer stands on other subjects because he's so reticent and so vague. Block E Media chips in $10, thank you, and says, why do you think that Bernier has a no chance of winning in the age of the internet? He has support on comment threads via Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. They said Donald Trump didn't have a chance, but the web won it for him. Well, that's a very good question. And someone earlier, I don't think it was a super chat, said that they would vote for Bernier if they could. Well, the thing is, in the Canadian system, you can't vote for Bernier unless you live in one of 338 ridings in this country, his local jurisdiction, called Beauce, which is part of Quebec. So if you do not live in Beauce, Quebec, you cannot vote for him. What you do in Canada is you vote for a member of his party in your district. And to set up 338 district associations and nominate 338 candidates across this country, or if you're not even going to contest them all, nominate 200, nominate 100. That is an extraordinarily large task. And to find quality people and to manage them and to fundraise and to get believe me, I observed it when I worked as a young person with Preston Manning. 200 days a year on the road, church basement to Rotary Club to just the rubber chicken circuit, as they say. Just that is an enormous, thankless task, especially in the second largest country in the world, which is Canada. And that's my chief disagreement with Bernier's tactic. It undermined Andrew Scheer, but surely that can't have been the primary purpose. if the primary purpose was to put Maxime Bernier himself ahead, how on earth did this accomplish that? It just gave him a huge job. Why not just bide your time? If you think Andrew Scheer is weak, why not just bide your time and pick up the prize when he drops it, if he's going to drop it next year? That's what I don't get. So yeah, you can say you're going to vote. So when you say in the age of Twitter and YouTube, Donald Trump, remember, many of the Republican primaries were what they call open primaries. So anyone could vote. You didn't have to be some specially selected delegate. He did have some organizers in different states, like I don't know enough about the Iowa caucuses or whatever, but he did have some boots on the ground there. But also, Donald Trump was a household name, and he had money, and he had staff, and he had actually done a lot of spade work in politics. He had done the circuit himself for years. So I really don't think there's a comparison. Both our systems are different, and Trump had more of a team and certainly more money and more name recognition. David Lincoln chips in $20. Thank you, David. Ezra, why not ask Stephen Mandel why he ran for mayor of Edmonton? There's buzz that he had enough of Bill Smith as mayor. Repetition in Ottawa. You know, I just don't know enough about that to give a thoughtful reply, David. I'm sorry. I can't. Hey, let's check on the time. It's 1:31. I'm going to have one more sip of water because I'm yapping so much. For those who are just joining us, looks like we got about 450 on the line, and people online. Thank you. I'm in Halifax. I'm actually right now at our Airbnb where we're staying to save a few bucks. If you want to help us cover the cost of reporting, I'm here. Sheila Gunn-Reid is here. Eitan Gilboard is here. And our videographer, Efron Monsanto, is here too. So there's four of us, and we're staying in two Airbnbs in the same building, which is pretty nice and more affordable than the hotels. Pretty close by to the convention center. If you are in Halifax itself, hey, we are having a little meetup tonight at the Prince George Hotel in a bar there called the Level Bar. That's from 9 p.m. till 11. And Sheila and I are going to have a big roll of tickets for drink tickets. How are you going to lose with that? Free drink. And I think the first 50 people who come will give free t-shirts too also. So just a little fun thing if you're in town. A super chat, what is that? You can chip in a few bucks and get your comments put in bright highlight. Jennifer Maga has another comment. She says, can they fire Andrew Scheer? Yes, every party has in their constitution a way to terminate the leader. There are scheduled leadership reviews in some cases. I mean, it depends on the constitution. After an election where there's no victory, quite often parties have an automatic or an easy-to-do leadership review. That is not going to happen. Andrew Scheer was made leader only 15 months ago, and although it was razor sharp, and Andrew Scheer obviously didn't do a proper job of assimilating his rival, Maxime Bernier, there was no move afoot to depose Andrew Scheer. If there was, I think Maxime Bernier took a lot of the fire out of their bellies, and he himself removed himself from the party. Speaking of which, it's funny, I've got some friends in Australia who were telling me about the regicide down there, how they toppled their latest prime minister. They do that down there. The parties take out their own leaders down there all the time. I don't know if that's preferable to our own system, I gotta say. I'm going to read some more regular comments. If you want me to read yours for sure, just chip in a super chat. It's 1:33. We'll keep going till that's Halifax time. It's 12:33 Eastern time. We'll keep going till the top of the hour. Haley McHale says, how can I email Tommy? That's a good question. The last I heard is that the police still have Tommy's old cell phone, so that doesn't work. And I don't actually think he's back on email. I mean, I talked to him through a messaging app, and I talked to him on the phone. But I don't know if you can email him in general, and I don't want to give you the wrong information. I don't know about the functionality of his site, TommyRobinson.online. Rippy Rip says Trudeau will go down in history as the worst PM. Well, no, I think his own father has that. And remember, his own dad was prime minister for about 16 years. So we can do a lot more damage in 16 years than in 4 years. Dan L., why did Trudeau get away with rape? I don't think anyone has accused him of rape. He's been credibly accused of sexual assault, as in sexually groping someone, but they're not rape. The Canadian Crusader says Bernier only wants the spotlight. He had the opportunity to affect policy from within, and he chose not to. Beating Trudeau is the most important thing right now. There's a lot of truth there. And I would say your criticisms of Bernier are reasonable, but it also falls to Andrew Scheer to not only A, have assimilated Maxime Bernier, but B, to be putting up some sort of fight against Justin Trudeau. Trudeau, I say again, was on such a long holiday this summer. Jagmeet Singh has been such a failure. Why has Andrew Scheer been AWOL, absent without leave? I don't know. Deploribus Unum says they stole Tommy's cell phone. What the hell? Yeah, they took it from him when they arrested him, and from what I heard, they haven't returned it. Oliver Tim says, I believe that only a major renaissance, such as never seen before, is the only thing that will save the West from demise. What do you think, Ezra? Renaissance means rebirth, and I think that is true. But, of course, people are born all the time, and ideas come all the time. By rebirth, I assume you mean rediscovering our Western civilization, what made it great in the first place, and valuing that again, and not just throwing it out as like a fool would toss a pearl back into the sea. Michelle Turner, is it not possible to have people run in every riding as a Bernier supporter as independent? Well, yes, and to do that, still you need 338 quality people, and to get on the ballot, and you could call yourself an independent, but Canadians don't typically support independents candidates. It's just not our custom. You would be better to have them under a party name, but the effort is finding those 338 quality people. Zenibi Menisa says, let's not split the vote. Yeah, I mean, Stephen Harper united the right, Andrew Scheer and Maxime Bernier just divided the right, and it's on both of them. Tommy Robinson, or Rami Thompson, when are you showing the Katie and Tommy video? Grr. Well, that was just recorded, I think, like 36 hours ago. And we have to edit it and get it out there. And so it will not be this week. But I want to get it out there quickly. Noi Tank says, Justin's kid Xavier is an old Spanish name, maybe to honor their Cuban heritage. Aha. I have no idea. Xavier, Xavier, Javier, it's various spellings of it. It's a, it's a version of the word savior. So I don't know if I would call it Spanish or Italian. Ingrid K. Warner chips in $5. Thank you, Ingrid. Do you think Mad Max would stand a chance if he joined the Libertarians with Tim Moen? Well, I think Maxime Bernier wants to be the boss of the party, and I think it would be Quebec-centric. And he says he wants to start a new party. I don't think he wants to start the Libertarian Party. And I don't know if they want him. I mean, you can't just say, I'm ready to take over a new party, because people who've been working in that party for years have a sense of ownership over it. All right, it's 1:38. We got 22 more minutes to see how many more questions we can get through. Ben Tomlinson, SCs are up, Ezra. I don't know what that means. Oliver Timms, keep up the great work, Ezra. I'll donate later when I'm not working overseas. Well, that's very nice of you. We are 100% viewer supported, which means I think in many ways we really have to be as much in touch with conservatives in Canada around the world as any political leader, because the bulk of the funding for Andrew Scheer is government funding. He gets a budget from the office of the Leader of the Opposition. Every MP gets a budget from Parliament. Even donations to the Conservative Party are not only given charitable tax treatment, but I think there's some sort of government subsidy for parties. I'm not sure if that's being revoked, but my point is, you can be a politician and never have to raise a dime and still have a solid chance, still have all your bills paid and a solid chance of being reelected. We don't take a dime of any government money, and so we have to earn it every day, which means we have to be attentive to our people. Marlene Westphal, Bernier has to attack the NDP corruption. Now, I'm not sure what NDP corruption you're referring to because, of course, the NDP are not in power federally. There may be some other corruption you're referring to, but generally corruption is when you have power and you abuse it in some way. Real Men Fish, do the right thing, Scheer, and cross the floor and join your Liberals. I don't think that, I mean, I've seen that, I'm going to call it a conspiracy theory, that Andrew Scheer is in some way in league with the Liberals. I simply don't think that's true. I think the opposite. He wants to replace the Liberals with himself. The trouble is, he thinks the way to do that is to be like the Liberals on everything from dairy cartels to global warming. Tony Nagy, can you ever see Canada divided between the East and West? I mean, a Canadian split. Well, there are divisions, of course. The greatest chance that would have had to happen, I think, would have been Quebec separatism, which came within 1% of happening in the early 90s. The Quebec Referendum, if I recall, that was in 1995, without double checking, that came within 1%. So that would have had probably a domino effect. Other provinces would have probably had some sort of a New Deal, because you take out a quarter of the population, a huge chunk of the geographic landmass in the middle of the country. You take out the French cultural fact. You're really left with a very different country. It's not just a smaller Canada. It's obviously an Anglo-Canada. It's a lot more like Australia, probably. Synthwork says, greetings from Birmingham, England. Well, hello and thank you for saying that. What's the demonym for someone from Birmingham? I know if you're from Liverpool, you're called a Liverpudlian. There's so many great little names. Someone told me what someone from Sunderland is called, and I can't remember Sunderland demonym. I'm just going to Google that. From Sunderland, you're called a Mackham. From Swindon, you're a Swindonian. And from Birmingham, it's not that exciting, I guess. A Brummie. A Brummie. That is actually exciting. Ezra's First Irregulars chips in a few bucks and a few pounds and says only 4 million white South Africans out of 45 million. Yeah. Now, everyone thinks, or not everyone, a lot of people think that they were the late comers, but many of the areas that are farmed by the Boers we were talking about earlier, the black population came later. I know that's hard to believe, but the Boers have been in South Africa for centuries. I don't want to get into a deep debate about South Africa because I don't have a deep command of the facts. But yes, the whites are a small percentage, and it is shrinking, partly through immigration of blacks and emigration of whites. Let's read some more here. Oliver Timms, Cockney's Rule. I love the various accents that I hear when I go to the UK. And it takes a little while to train your ear because sometimes it's just the way they say things. It's not how we Canadians and certainly not how Americans talk, but it's just, I love it. I love it. The endless variations. And it's a fairly small country. And to have different parts of the same city can have accents. I don't even know how that's possible. But to me, it's one of the beautiful things about the UK. Jay O'Shea says Scheer wants red PJs to bed at night. Wears red PJs. He looks like the kind of guy who does wear red flannel PJs, doesn't he? Adam Phillip, fellow Brummie. Yeah, you know what? My late grandmother was a Mancunian. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Zenabi Manisa says Ezra Levant should lead the Conservative government. Well, I have no intention of doing that. I have my hands full here at the Rebel, and I think we provide an important role. We are a non-partisan Conservative voice, and sometimes that means we criticize Andrew Scheer. Sometimes that means we criticize Maxime Bernier, and vice versa. And there are some strident Conservative partisans who are mad at us if there's ever any daylight between us and the Conservatives. They think any criticism at all is disloyal, but my loyalty is not to a partisan party. It's to our viewers and to the editorial principles. And as I've said 100 times, and I'll say another 100, we support the Conservative Party when it's conservative, and we criticize it when it's not. We criticize the Liberal Party when it is liberal. And on those rare, Halley's Comet, rare occasions when it does the right thing, we will say so because we are not a party ourselves. What's the point? If we were just a party, we may as well just work, for PR, it's not who we are. We have our independent thoughts. LDK777 says, Rippy Rip, the Sweden is not taking Christians either. Sweden is in deep trouble, although I hear that the Sweden Democrats, if I've got the name of the party right, the Nationalist Populist Democratic Party there that wants a halt to immigration, I hear they're leading in the polls. We'll see if that's true. Devin Wong, they want to criminalize all gun ownership. First they come for your speech, then the ability to defend yourself, and then finally your life. Yeah, I think you're right. And I'm not a scholar of the U.S. Bill of Rights, but it seems appropriate that the First Amendment goes to free speech and freedom of religion, and the Second Amendment goes to firearms. I think you need the Second Amendment to protect the first one. Primpal08 chips in $5. Thank you, and says, congratulations on passing 1 million subs. Already added over another 10,000 since then. Looking good. Yeah, isn't that pretty neat? We have 1 million subscribers. I don't know the exact number, but you're right. We've tacked on another 10,000 since then. So that's good. And it's funny because we just received our 100,000 subscriber plaque only about a month ago. It took them so long to give that to us. So now we're getting the million plaque. In fact, I think they're going to ship that to us soon. So the time lag in between was very short. The next milestone is 10 million. So you get a little plaque at 100,000, which is pretty cool. You get another plaque at 1 million, and then you get a plaque at 10 million. I don't know how many 10 million person YouTube accounts there are. It's got to be pretty small. Like you guys probably know, but I'm guessing it's 100 or less, right? And I imagine they'll have to make a 100 million subscriber plaque if PewDiePie can keep it together, because he's over 60 million. I see a couple more super chats. Block eMedia chips in $5. Thank you. Follow up with how fast communications is now, and that there's well over 1 year before the election. There's a ton of young people who will run and support Max. All right, well, you're speaking prospectively, and none of us know the future. Let's say you're a young person and you want to support Maxime Bernier. Where do you go? What do you do? Is there a website for the new party? Is there a way to sign up? Is there a regular newsletter? Is there a club? Is there a meetup? Who's going to pay? Who's going to organize the room? Who's going to pay? If it's like at a bar, who's going to? I guess you don't need to pay for everything, but you do need to pay for some things. Who's going to distribute membership books and collect them? And maybe you don't have books. Maybe it's all online. Maybe all these things are soluble. But every single thing I've just started to list takes a little bit of know-how, probably a little bit of money, some volunteer time, and it's just plain old work. It just doesn't happen overnight. And I know a lot has changed because of the internet. I am aware of that. I run a company based on the internet now that would have been impossible 10 years ago. But there are still enough real bricks and mortar things. Still, I mean, one of the currencies of a campaign is physical lawn signs, because when you're driving down a street and you see lawn signs, that is real life proof of what is in the virtual world of the cyberspace. So someone can have 1 million Twitter followers, but if they can't get anyone to put up a little lawn sign in front of their house, does that suggest that it's all fake? In the last election in Ontario, which was not that long ago, I live in a very interesting district that's partly Jewish and partly Italian and partly upper class and partly working class. And it was just very interesting to me to drive through the different neighborhoods and see the signs as some sort of a proxy for what was going on. And it was a riding that's an old school, very local activist, good guy, liberal, Mike Cole. I think his first name is Mike. Great local guy, Italian guy, really good egg. He's a liberal, but he was a good egg. He wasn't even that partisan. Was defeated by a fancy pants progressive conservative lawyer who didn't really have a community profile, but it was just the tide of Doug Ford, and you could detect that with the lawn signs. And so all the fancy ads and Twitter this and media that the Liberal Party had meant nothing because you had real support on the ground. And lawn signs were a fun way to detect that. That's just a very long-winded way of saying it's not just who's got tweets and Twitter. Donald Trump had Twitter and tweets, but he had a lot more than that going on for him. And of course, he took over a party with its infrastructure. So Donald Trump took over the Republican Party through a heavy Facebook, Twitter-oriented campaign. But remember, the system was different, where a lot of grassroots people could just join up. They didn't have to go through all the, like a lot of people could just show up and vote in an open primary. And of course, when he won the presidency, he took over the levers of power of the GOP. And that's what Maxime Bernier could have done if he just was a little more patient. He could have inherited the party. If you believe that Andrew Scheer would not win the next election, and I think that would be the way I would bet today, sorry, then wouldn't you want to stick around and just take it over when he loses it? If Andrew Scheer doesn't have the title Right Honorable 1 year from now, he's gone. I mean, people are saying, all right, he won fair and square, and he's a little weird on some things like dairy cartels, and he's a little weird with his rivalries with the Rebel, but that's minor. Let's give the guy a chance. So everyone's still sticking with him in the parties, what I sense, despite, I think, this online support. Listen, there's real support for Maxime Bernier, but I think he cut his own support way down with his move yesterday. But people, I think, still understand that the Conservative Party of Canada, with its 100 MPs and its leader, flawed as he is the best chance for defeating Justin Trudeau. And I think they will work hard to make that happen. But if it does not happen, and unless Scheer has a very successful showing, I mean, you can still lose but do very well. If Andrew Scheer would come within 10 seats of winning, let's say, people wouldn't throw him overboard. But unless he has a significant victory, and I know you're thinking, well, the only significant victory is an outright win. Well, let me just say, if he doesn't add 30 or 40 seats to what he has now, he will be gone. Because people won't have patience for that. They just won't. Let me make sure I've got all these. Did I read this one from A. Lambert? Young people see long-term and will vote Maxime Bernier. We must debate real ideas to see lasting cultural change and stop pandering to leftists. Okay, I agree with the debate. I like Bernier on policy. I liked his Twitter stuff. But that is being a pundit. That is not actually running. Like I say, Maxime Bernier will not be on your ballot. Like Donald Trump, I'm not an American, so I've never done this, but you vote directly for a president in the United States. Everyone gets to vote Trump or Clinton. If I'm right on that, right? I mean, I've never done it, but I think that's how it is. In Canada, you don't. Only the people in that one little district called Beauce, that's the name of his riding, I think, in Quebec, they're the only one who see the word Maxime Bernier on a ballot. Everyone else sees a member of his party, which has not even been incorporated yet. So you cannot vote for Maxime Bernier. You can, unless you live in his riding. You can vote for his party infrastructure, but he has no infrastructure right now. Block E-Media says, thanks for answering my questions. Wish I can type more into the SC box. Interesting times in Canadian politics. Lots of directions it can go before the election. You know what's funny? The size of your super chat box increases with the amount of dough. And I'm not telling you to put in more dough because you're very generous. But I think, like the other day, someone actually put in $50. And they had a lot of room to say what they wanted to say. I'm not telling you to do that. Just saying you could do that if you really wanted to. Darwin's Moth chips in $2. Thanks very much. It's 1:54, so we've got 6 minutes left. I'm just having a sip of water. Forgive me. I'm just talking so much. Okay, so let's read some more comments. Ben Tomlinson. Jason Kenney is likely going to return to federal politics after 2019. I disagree. 2019 is the Alberta provincial election, and he will need at least one term to fix the problems. And if he fixes the problems and Alberta's really humming, I think it's quite likely he will stay for a second term. That said, he is young enough that he could do 2 terms as Alberta Premier and still go federal when the occasion warrants. Stephanie M., thank you for your comments. I am much more at ease with your position. Okay, I'm not sure if you're talking to me. A. Lambert, thanks for answering. God bless. Well, thank you for that. Christopher Keach, open the borders to secure votes for generations of Liberals. Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that I saw an old newspaper clipping about the South Vietnamese, I think it was South Vietnamese refugees who wanted to come to America. And the Democratic Party governor of California was virulently against that. Why? I mean, they were visible minorities, so they check all the politically correct boxes. They were genuine refugees. They really were going to get killed. Why would the left-wing governor of California be against it? Well, because they were anti-communists, and he knew they would likely vote Republican. So I put it to you that if Mexicans were, and if Haitians, and if Puerto Ricans, although that they are Americans, let me just say Mexicans and Haitians and Guatemalans and Hondurans, if they were natural Republican voters, that wall would have been built by Barack Obama. That wall would have been built by Bill Clinton. Ezra's First Irregular says, discussing South African plight after the show. Okay. Tame Thing 1, are the Maritimes shifting away from Liberal yet? Well, I put it a different way. The Maritime Liberals are shifting away from Justin Trudeau. You see a slow and quiet rebellion against Trudeau's carbon tax out here in the Atlantic. Premier after premier saying, well, mate, we've already got our carbon tax. It's our gasoline tax, which is a cheeky and thoughtful way of saying, yeah, we already have a carbon tax. We're not going to take another. Thank you very little. For the first year or two of Justin Trudeau's prime ministership, the premiers of the Atlantic provinces, who were all Liberal too, were timid as church mice. They didn't say a word. They didn't stand up for the Energy East pipeline, which would have been an enormous benefit. I mean, let me say this about the Atlantic. Wonderful people, beautiful geography, great history, delicious food, proud patriots, but it's poor. It's poor. It's not dirt poor, but it's poor. And boy, they could use some more industry. Boy, they could use some fracking. They could use the Energy East pipeline, $15.7 billion construction project. That's a lot of money. But it was Justin Trudeau, and actually on the provincial side with fracking, that blocked all that. Ben Tomlinson, what do you think of the CAQ, the Coalition Avenir de Quebec, leading in Quebec? I think it's very exciting. And I think that Justin Trudeau sees that out of the corner of his eye. I'll take your word on the polls. I haven't seen them, but it wouldn't surprise me that they're leading. And I think this immigration, open borders thing is a big part of it. Pete Henderson chipped in $9.99. Thanks, Pete. I don't see a comment. I think there's a little thumbs up emoticon there. Yeah, it's yellow on yellow, so it's a little hard to see. But thanks for that, Pete. Appreciate it. Funky Monkey, £5. Great channel. Respect. Hey, thanks, Funky Monkey. You know, we have a toehold in the UK, which I presume is where you're from, judging from the fact you were chipping in pounds. We've got Jack Buckby over there. We got Katie Hopkins over there. Martina Marcota is over there, although she speaks with an American accent and doesn't do British-centric stuff. And we've got 152,000 supporters in the UK. Last I checked, it may be higher now. I don't know, maybe lower. So we love the UK too. It's very interesting to us because we're Canadian and we come from the UK. Historically, that's part of our country. There is a French quarter to our country too, of which Maxime Bernier is a part. Okay, let me read some more. Block E Media, $20. Thank you. I'll meet you kind of halfway. Best to Tommy, and if he's interested, up to it, he should come out to North America. Well, Tommy can't travel to North America for several reasons, including that he has criminal offenses on his record. And there's also a passport issue. In fact, one of the offenses has to do with his passport, I think. So it's difficult to get him to North America. Now, he can travel to continental Europe and other places that are more loosey-goosey. But I don't think he can come to North America. I wish he could, because I think Americans should hear his story, and I think Canadians should hear his story. And I think he would like it in America, because people are a little freer. All right, it's 1:59. Atlantic time, which is 12:59 Eastern time, which is 5:59 Greenwich Mean Time. So we're going to wrap up. I'm just going to see if there's one or two more fun ones to read. Christy, Katie Hopkins is not as good as you, Ezra. Katie Hopkins is different than me, and everyone has their own taste and style. And I admire Katie in many ways. We're just different people. And she sat down with Tommy for more than an hour, and I wasn't there. I was in London, and I heard it was a very powerful interview. I have not actually seen the whole thing yet, but I imagine it's going to be a big hit. Saint Jeanne d'Arc. I know Ezra heartily supports Tarek Fata. He's a friend of Rebel Media, and Ezra does very warm, lengthy interviews with Tarek. That's true. We have great friends who are progressive Muslims, ranging from Rahil Raza to Tarek Fata to Salim Mansour, and obviously I'm not going to list every ally we have. We have a regular contributor down under named Tanvir Ahmed, Dr. Tanvir Ahmed. In fact, he came with us on our Israel trip. So we have a lot of Muslim contributors, but they're, of course, progressive Muslims, are not of the Islamist persuasion. Folks, it's 2 p.m. out here, which means we've been doing it for an hour. Thanks very much. I see that 1,000 people were on the show. I appreciate that. I know not everyone wants the details of inside conservative Canada political gossip, but it was an important day, and we were actually a part of it at the Rebel. That's it for today. I will be doing my show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time from Halifax, so do tune in. And until then, on behalf of our little squad here in Halifax, goodbye, and keep fighting for freedom.